Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to those of you around the world. Welcome to the daily Trade the Chain crypto update, where we give you everything you need to know for the next 24 hours, and in this case, hopefully the entire weekend. Today is Friday, October 7th, and we are dealing with some fallout from unemployment data, as we discussed on the show yesterday. Payrolls, basically, at the end of the day, unemployment rate dropped due to payrolls coming in stronger than expected. So basically, the way I like to look at this is, less this number, although this is an important number, and more unemployment. And previous was 3.7, predicted was 3.7. It came in at 3.5, which means the Fed is probably going to have to either continue their course as expected and or tighten, which means that things are likely worse than expected. This is a good news is bad news situation, because it's good news that employment, typically you don't want unemployment going up. But in this case, the Fed does to decrease, or to help try and decrease inflation. So basically what happened is the S&P 500 plummeted. This was when the numbers dropped it was at 5:30, so the 5 o'clock hourly. We've been on a downward trajectory ever since. We are now, to the next POC at 36.40. Pretty much a lot of the bull case has disappeared, unfortunately. Doesn't mean that we cannot hold this level and somehow, continue higher. But, it's definitely getting very difficult to do so. So basically, if we can hold 36.45, we have a chance to try and shoot back up to at least, the bottom of this range, which would be, about 37.20-ish, something like that. And then if we cannot, then we are likely headed back towards the June lows. And I would expect it to get a little bit harder to creep down. If you are shorting, this is, already shorted, if that makes sense. And so if we do head down, it's likely going to be very choppy, and not, not very giving in terms of the type of trades that you may want. So if you did not short on the news this morning, it may be best to wait to see how things play out as we head into lunch on the Eastern time. But looking at Bitcoin, we can see, the big situation for this is the trend that we were on. This was the November 2021 downtrend on the daily that we were discussing breaking above, earlier this week. And of course we did, and we were riding that trend literally until pretty much just before we started the show. We broke beneath that daily trend and are now stuck around 19 point. We got as low as 19.3. Now we're stuck between 19.3 and 19.4. We obviously do have an oversold hourly, first one in weeks. A firmly oversold hourly since we dropped. Actually, let's see when the last time this hourly was this bearish. So since the drop, I believe this was one of the Fed meetings or CPI print or something like that. And then we had another drop below. So we could definitely go lower. RSI is not a perfect tool. But we are getting oversold into an area where you would expect some support. Let's see if I can draw a little box here. What am I looking for? So basically, the way I see it is this entire area is pretty solid support because of how much we traded in it and under it and above it. This is just a very contested area, and that is basically between 19.1 and 19.4. So we're in that magic box. We have a POC at 19.2 and basically 19.3, 19.2, and then of course 19.1. Depending on exactly where you look at the liquidity, there's a POC at 19.3 and 19.1. It's going to hover based on how we widen our volume profile. But basically, that just kind of points to the strength of this area. As we basically got three strong levels, 19.3, 19.2, 19.1, to try and find some footing for hopefully the weekend. So, we could definitely still, very much like the S&P, kind of do something like this. But then if it ends up holding, then we could have a giant spike. And of course, if it doesn't end up holding, then we have, we end up heading lower. We are going into the weekend. Last weekend we had a very tight range. So last weekend was basically, here was Friday, big jump. Markets closed right around here, and then markets opened, right around here. So we basically had a $300, $400 range that we traded in over last weekend. And judging by where we're at this was 3 a.m. on Sunday. So actually, let's look at the same time Friday. So Friday, we had just completed a pump, and then we barred back down. Now we are dumping. So do we bark back up and head back lower? That's certainly, or head back higher. It's tough to really say. Like with the S&P 500, we've had so much downturn already and so much immediate reaction that it seems like it's quote unquote priced in, or it's beginning to become priced in, which means it's probably on the back half of this downturn by now, as I would expect. Now, the reason that I'm still slightly optimistic going into the weekend is because Bitcoin sentiment is still bear or bullish. And we came off, we dipped down into last night pretty hard and had a sharp recovery into the morning. Hourly sentiment, of course, was pretty gross. It recovered very well into the morning and has obviously been at odds with sentiment, which is definitely something of interest. I think a lot of people were expecting some bullish continuation, not exactly for the payroll number to be piss poor. But this is definitely something to monitor, as it's starting to curl a little bit, but we have not seen it come down. And so we'll be actively monitoring this. The reason I'm optimistic is because of bullish sentiment heading into the weekend. Of course, it's this daily sentiment, so it's intraday. Of course, you can have major price swings and such, but tweet volume is still up. Trading volume is slightly down. We're heading into the weekend, not a very unusual, but to see daily sentiment still high gives me some hope. So there's your Bitcoin outlook. Obviously, we basically really want to hold 19.3. Ideally, we can close this hourly above 19.4 in 20 minutes if we can. Then maybe we have some range deviation. We pop back up here. We hit here, form a bit of a head and shoulders. You can see how that would form. And then we head higher. And then, of course, if we can't close above 19.4, which would definitely be the first bullish continuation signal, then we maybe ping pong back up to the range. We tag 19.3, 19.4, tag 19.2, 19.3, 19.1, 19.2, and then we slowly, form some sort of range going into the weekend, where we maybe pop down to 19.1, something like that. So I'm sorry for all the lines, but you can see that there's many different ways to look at this trading situation after a large downturn. And like I said, with equities, you don't really want to short this low. I mean, there's always value to be gained, but your risk reward is extremely skewed in terms of risk if you are shorting at this level. And your risk reward is definitely skewed in terms of risk longing this level as well, which makes it dangerous, and that's why you want some firm candle print. So ideally, what I'd like to see is a close above 19.4 for this hourly, and then I want the next hourly to come in. And if you can, I'll zoom in so we can see these candles. Basically, what I want to see is a strong hourly volume. So basically, something like this size, after maybe a hold candle, that would basically give continuation vibes. If you're looking for long. So the best way to catch, I'm not saying anybody should catch knives, but if you are looking for reversal signs and reversal patterns, typically a very strong hourly engulfing is a really good one. And so we already had one that failed. So if we get another one, it is more likely to succeed, considering there is interest. We obviously just got pushed down. I'm sure a bunch of longs had to close once we started breaking below that trend. But basically, you'd want to see another hourly, and this works for 15 and 5-minute candles as well for short-term scalps and such. But basically, we want to see a strong hourly volume candle close that is bullish, pretty much above the previous volume level. And if we can get that, then we have a few signs that point to a potential reversal or at least a range, which would mean 19.3 to 19.6, then we can ping pong around there before either heading down or either heading back up. So that's really what we'll be looking for in terms of a signal with sentiment being bullish. And of course, we would like the same for equities as well. If equities continue to bust down below this level, then that outlook that I just described for Bitcoin becomes much more moot. But we have seen equities make lower lows and lows while crypto is held up. So we'll have to see what this quote unquote relative strength looks like heading into the weekend. But the other worry is the dollar. I will say we did pump, earlier on the 5th, with a strong dollar. Risk did pump with the dollar on the 5th. But it does seem like the dollar is going to be a little bit more impactful as we digest this Fed meeting data. So if the dollar continues to gain strength, and of course it's overbought, but 4-hour medium-term time frame still looks pretty strong. If this continues higher, I would not expect it to fare very well for equities. And of course, if equities break down, then that is not a good sign for the rest of risk. And of course, equities are still oversold, but don't really care or seem to care. Volume is decreasing on this declining volume. Not entirely unusual. We had a very similar thing happen yesterday. We didn't recover until after the market closed yesterday, and recover is in air quotes because it never really got back above where it traded at, towards the end of the trading day. So signs, based on equities, not looking great, but of course, equities will close in several hours. I think about, 3-4 hours from now. So if they do close without looking horribly ugly, and Bitcoin can close this hourly above 19.4 and somehow climb its way back to 19.6, 19.7, then there is an opportunity for Bitcoin to have continuation. Of course, we have to watch out for this VWAP and this 200-day moving average. Let's say 3, 4, 5 hours for Bitcoin to try and make a recovery. That VWAP is probably going to end up having confluence with the 200 moving average at the 1 hour, which will have large confluence of resistance in coordination with this trend basically, this range line that kind of signals the top of the previous range that we traded in last week. So basically, we want to get back above that. We basically want to just prove that there's deviation underneath the daily trend and underneath that range, the top of the range that we traded in last week and broke above on Monday. So basically, either we start to just really free fall down, or we form some deviation, head higher, and try and at least scoop back above 19.7 into the weekend for some sort of large range. I do think, maybe 20K is a little bit out of the cards. 20.2, maybe the highs. But again, crazier things have happened, especially if we get some sort of turnaround on Monday with a decent crypto recovery over the weekend. We'll look at the daily just to give you a bit better perspective. Let me actually drag these out, because basically this is the top of the overall range. These are the June lows. And so we basically got this big old range, then we got a bunch of POCs and mini ranges in between. So if we keep zooming out, we can see how everything looks. So, we have seen this formation before. It's not entirely pretty, but our RSI trend is still alive. If this breaks down, then that's definitely a major short opportunity. So I'll be looking for that, because this would probably prove a breakdown or a catch tomorrow or Sunday. Meaning, this does look like a good level for a potential bounce and recovery. So if we start breaking down below this trend, then I'm definitely going to be shorting pretty heavily. And until we do, I don't think there's much reason to start stacking shorts at this level. Let's check out this. So it does look like we've broken beneath the 4-hour RSI trend, but we're already pretty low, and we're back towards where you would expect it to catch, considering supports is right around the lows of the RSI, right around 30, 35. So we did that deviation before. It's completely plausible here. Typically after an overbought RSI set, we will end up resetting, but it's never a guarantee with these types of things. And of course, we are in a picture perfect level to deviate and trick a lot of people. So potentially, we have another ugly 4-hour that ends up, coming down and tagging that 19.1, 19.2, and then we deviate up and out. based on this 4-hour, but I'll still be monitoring basically 19.3, 19.4 for potential bounce as, potential bullish divergence there. Nothing really strong on the technicals. So very tough time to read charts. I think definitely bearishness in the short term throughout the trading session is likely. Again, we know where we want to see our catches. Equities continue lower. Crypto will likely continue lower, but we may look for some strength. And if we do get some strength, if equities head lower, meaning, relative strength, equities or crypto not, following the exact equities trajectory like it is right now, then we could have a decent weekend ahead of us, or we could have another $300-$400 range where it's 19.3, 19.7 the whole weekend. Or it could be 19.1 to 19.4 by the time the dust settles, based on where we're at. So basically the best case is kind of wait and see. I know that's not the best advice, but with trading, you have to wait for your confirmation. You have to wait for your levels to hit. You have to wait for basically confidence building data points to make your trade. And right now there's nothing that I see that wants to tell me to go long or short. I know my levels. I know my trades are done from the morning. And now I wait and see if we can hold 19.3, 19.4 and what equities do to make my next move. And of course, I'll be actively monitoring sentiment for either strength or weakness as we head into the weekend. So good luck, happy trading. And if you're not in the Trade the Chain community, that's where all the juiciness goes down in the morning and of course in the afternoon. We were covering the full BNB hack yesterday and all the juicy stuff that comes with it. Didn't talk about it much today because the dust seemed to be settled. Yes, it was a hack. Yes, funds were stolen, but Binance is making sure that everything is reimbursed at the end of the day, and the market impact is relatively minimal, other than probably the trust in BSC itself. So we'll talk more about that next week. Good luck, happy trading, and we will see everybody on Monday.